it is so nice to have you on. Thank you for joining us for our Behind the Laces series.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to start with the obvious question. Your name is Fireball. How did you get that name?
So it actually has been my nickname since I was a baby, believe it or not. It has nothing to do with the Fireball whiskey. My grandpa tells me the story of, so the very first time he held me, I turned bright red and screamed, and he's just like, yep, that's my little Fireball, and it stuck. I think he actually, they say when you name something, you kind of like create what that's going to be. And so I think he is the one that gave me my little Spitfire personality. And so I blame him.
I bet you were born with that personality and he just cultivated it with the nickname and the naming. So now you are an alumni of the relay event. You're no stranger to this. You know what you're stepping into every year that you sign up. So how did you come across MS Run the US?
So the original time I heard about MS Run the US was in Omaha, Nebraska. They were doing a 24-hour treadmill challenge at Lifetime Fitness, and it was being put on by the GOATs, which is the Greater Omaha Area Trail Runners. So Larry Kelly, I believe that was his first year he got involved with the organization. So he's still one of my besties. And he, it was like set up to just kind of help him raise money. And so that was what piqued my interest in the organization specifically, the dedication and the camaraderie that I saw with the GOATs Treadmill Challenge. It just kind of captured me, and I've been here ever since.
And, you are an ultra runner at heart. So if you're an ultra runner who's interested in doing something for MS, it kind of is an ideal fit for that.
It fits perfectly.
Now, being an ultra runner, I've seen you the last couple of years do something called the Barkley Fall Classic. So tell me, what is this crazy event?
So the Barkley Fall Classic is, for lack of better explanation, it's a race through the foothills and the mountains in Tennessee. Really, the biggest thing of the race for me, the competition's with myself. It's moving past my own, barriers that I create myself. Whether it's, I didn't work hard enough on training my mental capabilities of pushing past something, or, my training wasn't on point for all of the hills, because there's a ton of hills, there's a ton of climbing, a ton of descent, and it's hard. It's a hard race. It's, physically and mentally exhausting, but it's so just beautiful at the same time.
I feel like you're downplaying it a little bit, because there is this element of like bushwhacking, but like I've seen your photos and you have like blood and like scrape marks, and you're just like, you look like someone threw you into thorn bushes off a cliff, and you've had to dig your way out. And every photo I see of you in this event, you're smiling, like glamour shots. You just look like you're on cloud nine. So it's not just running through the foothills. You're like, there's no trail, right? Aren't you like blazing your own trail? However you can get up the mountainside is how you do it. Is that correct?
So for Barkley Marathons, which is like the big, like the real version of it, if you will, that is more true, yes. So with Barkley Fall Classic, the majority of the race is actually, it's on the trails, the designated trails. There are portions that do go off of the trails. So like, and the names are going to be, they're fun. But so Testicle, Spectacle, Meth Lab, and Rat Jaw are all parts of the race that you do go off of trail. And so those are the ones where you see like those cuts and scrapes that you're talking about. So when you are climbing down and up hills that don't have a path. So like this last year, I was in the very, very front of the pack. And so that is where a lot of those cuts come from is, you're climbing up briar bushes.
It looks like it in the photos. Let's talk about this mental component. Like what when you're at war with yourself in these events, these ultra events, and it's about that mental training, what does it look like when you are at like a really low point? What does it look and feel like? Describe it to us for people that maybe don't know, who haven't pushed themselves that far.
Each year's been different. You know, the first year at Barkley Fall Classic specifically, since we're using that race, I wanted to quit. I wanted to quit so many times that first race. And I was like, I can't go any further. Like, I'm looking up at this hill and I'm like, how am I going to get up that stupid thing? Like, my legs are on fire. Like, I'm, you know, I don't know. So I think then it goes to that, why am I here? Like, why am I out on this course? Why am I putting myself through this? And the answer I always come back to is because I want it. And so that's kind of my little self pep talk is stop being a whiner, put your big girl panties on and move forward, because that's what it's about. It's forward, relentless progress. And once you stop moving, you're done. You're stuck. So.
And it's almost like, you know, you're making yourself tougher each year, right? Your goal this year is not the same as 4 years ago. So you're like toughening yourself up a little bit. And then also once you do it, you start to feel the difference between that pride in yourself and how that trickles into the rest of your life. When you face that wall and then push past it, and it gives you the sense of pride in yourself where you're like, I stuck with it. I faced myself. I put myself in this hard position and I just kept taking one step forward. Like, when you know that you have fought through this really low and get to the other side, you're like, oh, you can start to see the cycles of how that happens in real life too. And so it just all seems really connected.
That's awesome.
Well, and when you mentioned, you know, the progression every year. So like last year I was first female. I mean, so it started different because of COVID. So by the time I caught everybody that started before me and I was like actually in first place for female, I mean, I held on for dear life. Like, it was like, I'm literally like breaking apart briar bushes with my body, coming up rat jaw. And I'm looking at myself like, who is this person? I have no idea who this person is. And then, you know, as the race progressed, like, I knew I had nothing more. Like, I knew and, you know, as like the gal that was behind me caught me and then passed me, you know, and I'm like an hour left of the race. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I've been in first for like 8.5 hours. And now I'm like, but at that same time, like, I was able to be at peace with it, knowing that I gave everything I had. I didn't hold back. And, you know, and now it presents that new challenge of this year, I'm taking that golden ticket home. Like, there is no other option. And, you know, and I think like with the MS Run the US, it comes into play there too with, you know, every year I want more. Like, I want to do more. I want to be better at it. I want to, you know, bring more people into it and so on and so forth. So
I'm going to switch gears from the race. I want to talk about your gear. How do you choose your shoes, your clothes? How do you like equip yourself to do well? Let's say at MS Run the US, how do you make sure that you do well there?
So for me, like once I find something that works, I like to stick with that. So like I'll try out a couple different things, and then, you know, once I test them and like, okay, and I find what I want, then I'll buy a bunch of them in case I discontinue them. But so yeah, so it is. I mean, it's a tedious process. So taking them on short runs and taking them on long runs, and really just being completely aware of how my body feels during, and, you know, actually more importantly is after. So like with the pack specifically. So my favorite pack of all time is it's the Orange Mud Endurance Pack. So I use that for Barkley Fall Classic. I use that with MS Run the US. And what I found with like that pack specifically is it doesn't create any bouncing, or it doesn't, the pressure on my shoulders is different. So even if it gets me through, you know, 30 miles one day, like, is it going to work the next day? So making sure to replicate that in my training, you know, socks, like trying the different things. Like, okay, if I run through a mud puddle and my feet are wet for 2 hours and I'm still have to run, what effects does that have on my feet? Because again, if I can't put those shoes on and run again the next day, that's the problem. So for my gear specifically, I like to look towards, is it going to work well for me? Is it going to allow me to continue to do what I need to do for the rest of the week, the rest of the month, and so on and so forth.
Okay, before I let you go, I'm going to let you put me in the hot seat. Do you have a question for me that you have been dying to ask me over the last 4 years?
I do. And just, again, like we've talked so many times. And, one of the things that I always wonder is, in the beginning, like when you made the decision to do this, trek across the U.S. And I know it was kind of just like, I'm just going to do this. And, it was well thought out and everything. But where the relay is at this point, like, did you ever see, did you foresee that this was where it was going to go, or how has that met or exceeded your expectations in your terms of fundraising and awareness?
Yeah, well, it's certainly exceeded my expectations in terms of when the idea came to me to run across the country. It was very singular. It was very, I'm going to run across the country and I'm going to do this. So when I finished in New York, I did the running portion, 3,288 miles unfazed, but I only raised $56,000. And I was just defeated by that. I was so embarrassed for myself, to be honest with you. And so I went with that feeling of embarrassment of like, okay, this isn't finished. What else is here? And so the very first relay started in 2013. Our very first runner, when we were standing in Santa Monica, ready to run across the country, that is when the emotion that people thought I should have at my finish came, because that's when I felt that I had actually achieved something. They had convinced 16 other people that they could do this, and now we're running across the country. And that year we raised $134,000 and met that $500,000 fundraising goal within a year. So it's not easy to start a nonprofit and keep it going, but it's always been worth it, and I've always stuck with my commitment to you guys as runners. Like I always say, if like the runners are going to show up, then I gotta show up too. And so far, I haven't had a year where nobody comes around. So we'll just keep going with it until the runners dry up, which I don't think is going to happen.
No, I mean, eventually one year I'm doing the whole thing. Remember, we already talked about this.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm looking super forward to your episode and for you running across Utah in segment 3 with us this year.
Yes, cannot wait.
I'm Ashley Schneider, Executive Director of MS Run US. Thank you so much for watching our videos, and make sure to subscribe so you can get our latest uploads.